Minister Nguyễn Tấn Dũng pledges optimum conditions for foreign investors to prospects of trade and investment cooperation among the United States, ASEAN, and Vietnam. Hello and thank you for tuning in to Bizline, your special economic magazine on VTV4. You're with me, Linh Hương, and as usual, we start with several highlights for the past week. The government of Vietnam always does its utmost to create favorable conditions and ensure safety for investors to do long-term business in the country. Prime Minister Nguyễn Tấn Dũng affirmed this while addressing the Midterm Vietnam Business Forum, or VBF, in Hanoi on June 5th. Mr. Dũng recalled the recent disturbances by a number of extremists in the wake of China's illegal placement of its Haiyang Shuyona H1 oil rig in Vietnam Exclusive Economic Zone, affecting FDI operations. He said the Vietnamese government has taken the matter very seriously and have implemented tough measures against the unrest to help affected businesses recover from the consequences and resume normal operation, as well as ensuring safety and security for foreigners in Vietnam. The forum also discussed policy dialogue in tax, labor, and relevant amended laws between the government and the local as well as foreign business community. The Vietnam-Singapore Business Forum 2014 opened in Ho Chi Minh City on June 4th. Organized by the Vietnam Chamber of Commerce and Industry, the three-day event is a platform for the exchange of business ideas, tackling current challenges, and developing a bilateral strategic partnership. It focuses on the fields of financial services, tourism, agro-fishery forestry production and processing, and real estate investment. It also offers participating enterprises a chance to showcase their products and services. In May this year, Singapore ranked third among 101 foreign investors in Vietnam, with a total registered capital of over $30 billion. Several provinces of Vietnam have seen strong flows of FDI capitals in the first 5 months of this year, thanks to the government and local authorities' efforts in supporting foreign businesses. The total registered capital of foreign direct investment projects in Ho Chi Minh City was $793 million for the year, while Dong Nai attracted some $600 million of FDI capital, a year-on-year increase of 40%. Also on foreign investment notes, Japan has confirmed to continue its official development assistance, or ODA, to Vietnam after rumors of suspensions due to bribery allegations concerning a Japanese-funded Hanoi Railway project. According to the Ministry of Planning and Investment, Japan will approve new ODA projects after Vietnam commits to launch an in-depth investigation and come up with all possible plans to ensure safe business environment for investors. According to the Ministry of Industry and Trade, Vietnam raked in some $58.5 billion from exports in the first 5 months of this year, a year-on-year increase of 15.4%. This year's goal is estimated at $145.3 billion, up 10% comparing to last year. Vietnam is well on target to reaching the year's export goal. In May alone, export turnover rose by 3.5% from the same month last year to $12 billion. Industrially processed and agro-aquatic exports reached a record high at $42.4 billion, accounting for 72% of total export turnover in the period. This trend is closely aligned to the national export strategy. Meanwhile, the country imported only $56.9 billion worth of goods and services up to the end of May, leading to a national trade surplus of $1.65 billion for the period. HSBC Vietnam released a report on Manufacturing Purchasing Managers Index, or PMI, on Monday. The report stated that overall business conditions in the manufacturing sector were strengthened. PMI, an indicator designed to provide a single-figure snapshot of operating conditions in the manufacturing sector, posted 52.5 in May. This index is above the neutral level of 50, which indicates a favorable result. Exporting orders rose in May at a slight rate, despite the sharp rise in shipping costs. Manufacturers keep their output prices largely unchanged during the month so as to stimulate demand. According to experts at HSBC, the latest PMI shows that manufacturing sector in Vietnam is competitive, with productivity still expanding. American commercial real estate company CBRE recently released the results of its latest research on the world's retail markets. According to the report, Hanoi ranked 13th among the 20 hottest retail markets in 2013. Paris topped this list by attracting 50 new product brands last year. The top 5 markets also included Tokyo, Hong Kong, Abu Dhabi, and Berlin. With a large population and fast urbanization, Hanoi is becoming a more attractive market for retail brands. Those are the highlights from the past week. Up next, we'll discuss the prospects of trade and investment cooperation between United States, ASEAN, and Vietnam in our Crosstalk. A delegation of American CEOs organized by the U.S.-ASEAN Business Council began a visit to ASEAN region, including Vietnam, just last week. The delegation this time is also led by U.S. Commerce Secretary Penny Pritzker. The goal of the visit is to express the confidence of the U.S. business community in the economic development prospect of Southeast Asia, including Vietnam. In addition, the participation of U.S. Secretary of Commerce in the visit shows the depth of U.S. government commitment to the economic aspect of the rebalance towards Asia. In this week's edition of Crosstalk, our reporter had a chance to sit down with Alexander Feldman, President and CEO of the U.S.-ASEAN Business Council, to talk more about the trade relations between the United States, ASEAN, and Vietnam. But first, let's take a look at some highlights of the trip.
During her visit to Vietnam on June the 2nd, U.S. Secretary of Commerce Penny Pritzker met with Prime Minister Nguyễn Tấn Dũng and thanked the Vietnamese government for their continuous efforts to improve its investment environment, implement commitments when entering the WTO, and facilitate foreign investors. Concerning the recent incidents in the EC, at a press conference held with the Vietnamese media, Pritzker emphasized the confidence of the U.S. business community in the economic development potential of Southeast Asia and reiterated U.S. commitments in the region.
We're very concerned about the dangerous conduct and the intimidation by the vessels operating in this area. And the United States has a national interest in the maintenance of peace and stability and the respect for international law, as well as unimpeded lawful commerce, including the freedom of navigation and overflight through the South China Sea.
Ms. Pritzker's visit also pushed for negotiations on the Trans-Pacific Partnership, or TPP, which, according to her, will boost Vietnam's export by 32% and GDP by 25%. Also during the trip, Pritzker and the business delegation of the U.S.-ASEAN Business Council were welcomed by State President Trương Tấn Sang to talk about the U.S.-Vietnam trade and investment prospects. Companies participating in the delegation include ACE, UL, AES, General Atlantic, Marsh & McLennan Companies, Mead Johnson Nutrition, Qualcomm, and Trio Tino.
First of all, thank you very much for joining this interview with VTV4. Now, what can you describe about the U.S.-ASEAN trade relations in recent years? Any significant achievement, focus, or highlights?
Well, I mean, I think it's the U.S.-ASEAN trade relations is exciting for us. The advent of the ASEAN economic community really brings together economies of scale that alone none of the 10 ASEAN countries could achieve on their own. So, you know, when you talk about a market of 600 million consumers and a GDP for the region of $2.4 trillion, that is very exciting to U.S. business. ASEAN is incredibly important to the United States. already, but we see it growing in the future. And part of the reason why we're here in Vietnam is to talk about the opportunities for ASEAN, not only for the U.S.-Vietnam relationship, but for the U.S.-ASEAN relationship. So ASEAN already is the fourth largest export market for the United States. It's the third largest export market, or the U.S. is the third largest export market for ASEAN. And even more importantly, the U.S. has a huge stake in ASEAN. We have $190 billion of investment in the 10 countries that make up the ASEAN region. And to put that investment in perspective, that's more than the U.S. has invested in the BRIC countries, Brazil, Russia, India, and China combined. So you add up all the investment in China and India, and add Brazil and add Russia, and it's still not bigger than the U.S. Investment in ASEAN.
Okay, so there's have been a lot of trading activities. What are some of the potential in trade that the U.S. still think that they want to explore and invest more in ASEAN?
Well, I think that, the high-tech, the internet market, the e-commerce market is something that's growing around the world, not only in ASEAN, but in America, in Europe, and throughout the world. But certainly consumers in ASEAN have taken to the internet like no other. For Facebook, ASEAN is the number 2 market in the world for Facebook, if you put it all together. Number 2, only after the United States.
Okay.
So it's very important, but it's growing. It's growing very fast. So we see huge potential for companies like Amazon maybe to come out and service the e-commerce market. And we see, traditional opportunities as well. Companies like Nike have said that if there's a TPP conclusion, that they will produce more in Southeast Asia than they ever have, maybe double their production in Southeast Asia. So it's very, very, very interesting about what could happen. And obviously, I just threw in TPP. That's something that's also a bilateral issue between Vietnam and the United States, but it also includes 4 ASEAN countries, and the Philippines and Thailand have both, over time, said that they want to join TPP. So that'd be 6 of the 10 countries.
How about some of the issues that the business communities of U.S. ABC wants to be addressed within the ASEAN bloc?
Well, we want to see continued expansion of the cooperation between the ASEAN countries. So we want to see harmonization of laws and regulations that allow trade in goods and services to move more freely within ASEAN. So the single window initiative that would create a common customs union allowing the same forms to be used across ASEAN no matter which country you enter through would be a great step forward. And the other thing a single window does is it takes forms that are done on paper and through people that take time and effort to be made into electronic forms, which would be processed much more quickly and much more effectively.
Regarding China's illegal placement of an oil rig within Vietnam's exclusive economic zone and continental shelves, creating a lot of tensions in the South China Seas, also known as the East Sea for Vietnam. How would that affect the business environment in ASEAN, and how concerned is the U.S.?
Business doesn't like uncertainty. The United States doesn't like to see conflict arise, especially among its friends. And we want to see China continue to grow, but not in a way that creates conflict or uncertainty. So, obviously, so much of the world's trade passes through the South China Sea. We need to make sure that those waterways remain open to trade, and international waters and international boundaries are respected. So we hope that the parties, including Vietnam and China, would find a way to resolve these issues in a peaceful and very easily to understand manner.
What else are you expecting from the ASEAN bloc in order to promote more trade with the U.S.? This, as you mentioned, you wanted to have a free trade agreement, U.S. ASEAN. How should it be initiated?
Sure. The U.S. ASEAN Business Council has stated one of our goals is to see the United States and ASEAN have a free trade agreement that encompasses all 10 countries. There's a couple ways to get there. One way would be to ensure that all 10 ASEAN nations may accede to the TPP agreement. which unfortunately right now is not the case. Laos, Cambodia, and Myanmar are actually excluded because they're not members of APEC. But we also would love to just see a straightforward U.S. ASEAN free trade agreement, much as ASEAN has with China or Japan or Korea or Australia, New Zealand, and India. So ASEAN has five agreements with 6 countries already. And we'd love to see the United States be the 6th agreement with the 7th country.
The latest publications, ASEAN Matters for America, America Matters for ASEAN, released earlier this year by the East-West Center, the Institute of Southeast Asian Studies, and the U.S. ASEAN Business Council, pointed out several highlights of the U.S.-ASEAN relations. With more than 36 years as dialogue partners, the U.S. and ASEAN cooperate on a broad range of initiatives to address regional economic, securities, environmental, and humanitarian challenges. Almost $100 billion in goods and services are exported to ASEAN. ASEAN is the #1 destination for U.S. investment in Asia, with almost $190 billion in invested capital. Meanwhile, ASEAN investment to the U.S. exceeds $27 billion. In terms of travel and tourism, over 3 million Americans visit ASEAN annually, and visitors from ASEAN countries spend over $4 billion in the United States. Now moving on, just talking about Vietnam, what do you think about the current business environment of Vietnam?
Well, obviously, we're coming at a very interesting time. The mission has been somewhat overshadowed by what's happening in the South China Sea, what recently happened with Chinese or perceived Chinese factories in Vietnam. So there's, obviously we're coming in very interested on how things are going to move forward. But we also look beyond what's happened just in the recent past to see the progress that's been made by the Vietnamese government in controlling inflation, in stabilizing the currency, in having a positive trade balance. All of those things are quite good. In addition to that, we're a little concerned about the banking environment and non-performing loans and some of the state-owned enterprises. But again, the government is making progress on all of those issues. So we're interested to learn more about progress for privatization of some of the state-owned enterprises. We're interested to learn more about how the banking system will be further stabilized. And all of those things help. Vietnam is really seen when I go around the United States and talk to different folks. We talk about Vietnam as part of the VIP. Vietnam, Indonesia, and the Philippines. Those are the 3 markets right now that are most interesting for our members. Those are the countries that they're looking to grow in, but obviously all 3 of them have their challenges. And so it's not a slam dunk, but those are the markets that have the most interest. And Vietnam, of course, is the first of those. So one of the things that we've been really impressed with over the years is the way that the government listens to the business community, not just the American business community or the foreign business community, but the business community writ large. So we talk to VCCI, we talk to entrepreneurs here in Vietnam, and we find areas where we commonly agree, and often those are the areas that the Vietnamese government responds to and creates a better environment for business.
What did the U.S. ABC business delegations hope to achieve after this June business missions led by U.S. Secretaries of Commerce with regards to trade relations with Vietnam?
Certainly, the U.S. Secretary of Commerce is there, but our chairman as well, Evan Greenberg, is leading a group of CEOs alongside the secretary. And what this mission is really all about is showing that the U.S. government and the U.S. private sector care about Vietnam, care about ASEAN, and care at the highest possible levels. So our mission really is one to express that to the Vietnamese government, to express a hope that there will be two-way trade and investment. So we hope some Vietnamese companies will come to America and invest in America as well. And we certainly think the TPP agreement, when it gets completed, will further help that process. and provide opportunities for Vietnam companies as well as American companies.
What will be the main drivers for U.S.-Vietnam trade growth in the coming time?
Well, I think it's gonna depend on the companies involved and everything else. But our conversations with the government and as well as our own sort of gut feeling is that high tech, e-commerce, the internet will be a big part of the future of the relationship. But so we hope will be in manufacturing, maybe going up further on the line. We talked today a little bit about processing of agricultural products before they leave Vietnam, so maybe looking at some of those opportunities as well. As you know, Starbucks is a relatively new player in Vietnam, but they're looking at sourcing coffee from Vietnam. So there's a lot of different opportunities. It doesn't have to just be high tech, but I think high tech is certainly one of the more exciting areas and one of the areas where the U.S. really plays a leadership role in the world.
So that's something U.S. companies will be focusing on the future. That's high tech, right? What about maybe some other sector like skill development that you have mentioned?
Sure. Well, there's a couple things that we're doing proactively through the USABC. One of them is across ASEAN. Putting together a conference later this year to talk about 21st century skills development. What do our companies, and we're a broad range of companies from Coca-Cola to Nike to Intel to Google to Citibank or JP Morgan to insurance companies like our chairman runs in ACE. They all are going to need different skills, and we want to make sure that the universities here in Vietnam and throughout Southeast Asia are putting together curriculums, courses, that have people come out of the university graduating and ready to come into multinational companies like ours. So that's one area, and then the other area that we're very excited about is something that we're doing with the U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID. We agreed to partner with them earlier this year to create a very robust training program for SMEs and entrepreneurs. And we have already conducted a couple of workshops in Vietnam, and we're going to look to do more and have online opportunities. I think it's very exciting in terms of SMEs in Vietnam and in the United States are really the backbone. More people work for SMEs than work for multinational companies. And SMEs often are suppliers to the multinational companies. And one of the things we're going to be talking about in these workshops is how do you take your company and get it to a point where your quality, where your standards are up to world-class standards, and then be able to supply into companies like Procter & Gamble or General Electric. So we hope that those can come. I mean, obviously there's all different ways to supply those companies, but there's tremendous opportunity, and Vietnamese people are very entrepreneurial. I mean, we met with a handful of entrepreneurs last night for dinner, and it was very impressive.
Last question. Share with us the plan of the U.S. ABC in terms of promoting more trade between the U.S. and Vietnam.
Well, we hope to continue to grow. Our own council is growing fairly rapidly. We've grown about 45% in the last 5 years. So that's a good indication of American interest in Southeast Asia. We hope to continue to grow that. We hope to continue to be involved, to continue to work with partners like VCCI, and to find ways in which we can support Vietnam's growth and Vietnam's economy, because we think with a growing Vietnam, with a healthy Vietnam, with a peaceful Vietnam, all of us benefit. We really believe that as the waters rise in a positive way, all of the boats will also rise, and so we hope that to be a part of the Vietnam success story.
Thank you very much for taking your time here with us.
Thank you. It's a great pleasure.
Yeah.
That was our crosstalk with Mr. Alexander Feldman, President and CEO of the U.S. ASEAN Business Council, as he and his delegation of CEOs from 9 leading U.S. companies were visiting Vietnam for the 2nd annual CEO mission. Together with many meetings with high-level government leaders, more trade and investment opportunities are expected to expand, contributing to more socio-economic development of not only Vietnam but also the ASEAN bloc as well. That also wraps up this edition of Bizline this week. Thank you very much for tuning in. You can get in touch with us by email at bizline@vtv.vn. From our team here in Hanoi, until next time.